The United States makes the UN work when it wants it to work. And that is exactly the way it should be, because the only question for the United States is what's in our national interest.
My name is John, and the International Criminal Court is now in session. Happy December, everybody. It is the 6th of the month, and once again we are going to look at the situation in Ukraine. So, let's start. Now, as you can see, I am not using the Syriac map. I am using instead my own map due to the fact that Syriac is on hiatus, which means that his own map is not going to be up to date with the current situation in Ukraine. And yeah, I hope you all bear with me on this one. So, yeah. Anyway, let's look at the situation, shall we? First of all, Stepnogorsk. The Russians have continued pushing through the town and have taken control over the majority of it, and are on the brink of seizing these commie blocks here within the dead center of town. Should they be able to capture these, along with the kielbasa factory here, you know, the sausage from Poland, that is, Stepnogorsk will completely fall to Russia. And other than Ukrainians pushing back the Russians in Mala-Takhmachka, there's not really a lot of news going on in the main Zaporizhzhia direction. But in the Gulay-Pulay direction, there is some news. Now, before I get to the town of basically the namesake of the front, that is, let's also talk about the Dnipropetrovsk region, which is effectively part of the Gulay-Pulay front. The Russians have lost control over the village of Taiki, so there's a possibility that Ukrainians will try to push the Russians back further away from the Volcha River, and may try to retake the village of Oristopol too, which is adjacent to Veliki Komikhalivka. But realistically, if you ask me, guys, I think Ukrainians are just trying to buy time to better man their defenses on this side of the Volcha River so that the Russians wouldn't be able to cross. And in addition, we can see that not a lot here has changed, except for the fact that Dobropole has apparently switched hands a couple times, though as far as I'm concerned, the Russians still have control over this village, and are currently right now fighting for Varvarovka. And if you ask me, guys, I think Vostok Group, which is the Russian army grouping in charge of the Gulay-Pulay direction, I think they're going to get bogged down here for a while because of how difficult the fight for Gulay-Pulay itself is going to be. I mean, it's no small fry. It's kind of a sizable town. As you can see, there are commie blocks here. And also, they got to cross this river here. So, yeah, it's going to be a little difficult for them to get the job done. And by the time that they're able to, which, let's just say, maybe around Christmas or even January 2026, it's possible that because of how much they're putting into this area, the Russians might lose some more ground in the Dnipropetrovsk direction. It's very possible, but time will tell. Now, in the Novopavlovka Dnipropetrovsk direction, the Ukrainians have fought back and have retaken control or are contesting the majority of Ivanovka. Along with that, it appears that Ukrainians have also struck back in the village of Novopavlovka, and while AMK claims that the Russians have lost complete control over this village, I disagree with him because I just don't think there is enough evidence available to suggest that the Russians have lost complete control over it. Now, if these reports of Novopavlovka being recaptured by the Ukrainians were to be true, then, of course, yeah, it's going to be kind of an ugly setback for the Russians in this area, like on their way to Mazova, but they're definitely going to try coming back, and, yeah, I don't really know what else to say other than, yeah, Russians have been dealt with some setbacks here, and it needs to be acknowledged. And I honestly don't think that these setbacks are really going to see the end of it until Mayanograd is cleared. Now, speaking of which, let's talk about the Pokrovsk direction. The Russians have continued advancing in the direction of the village of Grishino, and have also advanced north of the city of Pokrovsk. Now, even though Ukrainians have claimed that they are still inside the city, like with control and all, I mean, look, let's not doubt it. There is definitely still pockets of Ukrainian resistance in the basements within Pokrovsk itself, but do they have any control whatsoever over the city? No, they don't. They lost it, and it's not going to change. And then going next door, we got Myanograd here. Now, as you can see, Myanograd is in a full-blown encirclement. The Russians have complete control over the southern neighborhood of Myanograd, and along with that, they are still contesting for these commie blocks here. Apparently, the Ukrainians are located in the center of Myanograd, and the Russians are basically just bombing the entire city to ruins so that the Ukrainians wouldn't be able to fight anymore. And in my opinion, I think they're going to succeed in this, even though it's going to cost them some valuable time when it comes to trying to push for the Dnipropetrovsk and Dobropila directions. But yeah, there's not a lot of changes, though, for the most part, though, except for, well, this Terrakon here being captured by the Russians. But yeah, the Myanograd pocket is pretty much cooked, though I still think it's going to take a few weeks or 1 month to clear it out completely. Rodinsky is basically under Russian control at this point. Again, Suketsky is in a gray zone. And also, the Russians have continued their advances in the direction of Turetsky after they captured Shakovo. And it's because of these recent pushes that they have managed to capture the majority of Sofivka. And are also on the brink of also causing Ukrainians a lot of problems too in Turetsky, which is this village here, which goes on the way to Druskovka. Should the Russians be able to capture Turetsky, then what I'm expecting to happen next is that I don't really expect the Russians to really have that many issues, like going this way. I mean, there's definitely going to be a big operational space for them, and I just don't think the Ukrainians are going to be able to defend all these villages here, which are no-name places, along with the fact that they don't really got a lot of things going for them, other than the fact that, well, that they're on the way to Sylviansk and the Kramatorsk. Now, speaking of Sylviansk and the Kramatorsk, let's talk about the Konstantinovka front. So, as I mentioned, Russians are on their way to Druskovka, and once they take Turetsky, they pretty much will be on their way to doing just that. But in the Konstantinovka direction, the Russians have apparently consolidated their control over the parts of southeastern Konstantinovka itself and are advancing in the eastern part of the city. Though time will tell, though, if they'll be able to not only make further gains, but also if they're able to take maybe like another big chunk of the city before the year comes to a close. But I honestly don't think that's possible. They are contesting for Konstantinovka, no doubt, but we don't necessarily know how many months it's going to take for this whole city to fall. I mean, it's bigger than Pokrovsk, as you can tell. It's really big. Now, there have been reports that the Russians have captured Klinove, Virolubivka, and Bezimyane. However, there is no evidence to suggest that these claims are true. Now, if they were to be true, then the Ukrainians are pretty much cooked in Konstantinovka, because then the Russians can just go downhill and cut these supply roads going into Druskovka and also effectively Sylviansk and the Kramatorsk. But right now, I just don't see any proof for it. But at the same time, I'm not ruling out the possibility of such a capture, so I'm going to keep these in the gray zone for now. Ukrainians might still control it, just to be fair. So, Vasyukovka is, I guess, full control by the Russians, along with Pizino. And then going up north, the Ukrainians have lost control over half of the village of Savyato-Pokrovsky, which is the last road that you can get into Siversk through. And as far as I'm concerned, when it comes to the town of Siversk, the Russians now control roughly half, if not like 2/3 of the town already. Russians have been geolocated in the commie blocks here in the very edge part of the town. And according to Deep State UA, which, as you guys know, is a very pro-Ukrainian source, the Russians have taken control over these commie blocks. And there's even diehard Ukrainian sources on Telegram that are saying that the situation in Siversk is not good. like really not good that is, and it's becoming apparent that they may have to withdraw from this town due to the logistical hell that is raining upon them. I mean, they cannot go west, because then you would run into a Russian grouping within the Liman direction led by Zapad group, and they also cannot go east because, well, that's controlled by the Russians now. They also cannot go south, which is also controlled by the Russians. North is gone. And all these areas here, I mean, I don't really see a lot of ways to get in or out of Siversk. So they'll have to walk on foot in order to get out of there. So yeah, the Ukrainians are pretty much cooked in Siversk, and I do genuinely believe that this town is going to fall before the end of 2025. It's just, the signs are already there already. I mean, and the loss of these commie blocks and probably the central Rada building here already leads me to believe that Ukrainians have already... Oh, wait. Yeah, it appears that it's still being contested, that Rada building, but I think the Russians have probably already captured it by now. Yeah, so, yeah, I'm expecting them to lose Siversk before the end of the year. Now, going into Liman direction, Stavki has apparently been mostly recaptured by the Ukrainians. Dobry Shoveo is now contested too, between Russians and Ukrainians, but we have no further updates there. No updates also from the city of Liman, so we can pretty much conclude this front for now. And then going into the Borova direction, there's a lot of bad news coming for the Ukrainians out of here as of late, because the Russians have attempted to advance again, like north of Borivska and Drivka, and are about to try to take control over the village of Bahuslavka. Should they be able to take this village, then Borova will be cut from the north completely. And then, yeah, the Russians will try to make a push from the north towards the town of Borova, which is not really too big, but it's also not too small either. It's like a medium-sized town, but not as big as Gulay-Pulay, though. Now, as for the city of Kupyansk, we got a huge problem here. So, as you guys remember, in the last, 1 to 2 months, Russia had claimed to have taken control over majority, if not all, of Kupyansk from the armed forces of Ukraine. But there's a problem. As I said, geolocations provided by both Russians and Ukrainians suggest that the armed forces of Ukraine are still very much in the city's western side itself. And because of that, I don't think the Russians have as much control over western Kupiansk as I initially believed. And going based on the Z Committee's map of Kupiansk, I decided to just put a lot of western Kupiansk in a gray zone here. I know it looks pretty damn ugly, and I don't blame you guys for thinking that way, but I feel like this is the actual situation right now in Kupiansk. It's a complete mess for both Russians and Ukrainians, but I think right now, logistics-wise, Ukrainians have the edge, and it wouldn't surprise me at all if they're able to keep pushing the Russians out of the city itself. But time will tell if they're able to do that, because they still have a lot of difficulties trying to take it. And I think there's high casualties, too, among the Ukrainians, but so far, not good for the Russians. Lastly, for the city of Volchansk, it has now completely fallen to Russian control. There is no doubt about it now. Geolocations, along with multiple mappers, like pro-Russia, pro-Ukraine, even the neutral guys, they all say that Volchansk is now under Russian control. And because of Volchansk falling, they have now attempted to break out of the town itself. And they have started by trying to take Vilcha, which is a suburb south of it. And they have also continued advancing in the village of Liman. So, yeah, the push towards the village of Beli Kolodiaz has started. But, however, I honestly don't know if they're going to be able to advance too far in the Kharkiv region next year if Zapad continues to screw up as they had, in Kupiansk. And unless this pocket goes, I just don't think the Russians are going to go really anywhere deeper into Kharkiv region. Now, there's still talks about, the political situation right now that is taking place between the Americans and the Russians, but I feel like Vance and Trump's words are just empty. It's a bunch of yapping nonsense just to try to garner some votes before next fall's midterm, and because of that, I'm not going to really take them too seriously. So yeah, I mean, it's possible the talks are going well and we just don't know it. But for now, though, I think they're a bunch of crap. So I hope you guys enjoyed today's video. Comment below what you think of the situation within Ukraine. And I'll see you guys next time. It probably will be a while before I make the next video. Maybe like 6 days or so. So like basically not until next week. Until I make another video about the situation. Because holiday season is here. So I'm going to be very busy with family and friends. Because holiday season festivities always come first. And second of all, there's just not really a lot going on right now on the front. And because of that, content is most likely to slow down. So I'll see you guys on next time in the next video. And take care of yourselves. Peace out. Bye-bye.